Okay, so a lot of people have asked me to reply to ShortFatOtaku's video, A Rebuke of Veganism. It's got 2.7k likes, which is a little concerning, so let's just check it out and see what he has to say.
You know, I've never really known where to put vegans on the political spectrum.
Okay, so I would say more vegans are left than right.
Stances on the environment make them sound like ecofeminists, and their views on animal rights certainly reveals them to be bleeding hearts.
Okay, so we're pro-environment. I guess that's what you're going off, and you're saying that makes us sound like eco-feminists. Well, I'm not sure what the connection to feminism is, but sure, both those groups care about the environment. So, I mean, if that's the connection, okay. And then our views on animal rights make us sound like bleeding hearts. Well, I don't like that word because it makes us sound over-emotional, and I don't think you have to be over-emotional to support animal rights or recognize the Holocaust or slavery was wrong.
So I always thought they fit right into the social justice hodgepodge of terrible ideologies.
So you just sorted us into a group based on barely any evidence. Not a great start. Okay, let's keep going.
However, vegans regularly talk about their health as if it is a controllable component of their lives, rather than determined at birth like the fat activists claim.
Okay, that might be a bit of a straw man of the fat activist position, but yeah, I think that you could say that there are more vegans than fat activists who would consider obesity something that is bad, something that shouldn't be normalized, and that you're not bound to from birth. I think that the kind of views that would be like that would be more common among vegans than fat activists. Even if you grant that it's a minority of both groups that think like that, I think that still, yeah, okay.
So I'm not really sure. Of course, at the same time, social justice warriors believe that gender is a social construct, and that biological determinism is tantamount to bigotry.
Gender is a social construct. Well, yeah, I mean, it depends how you mean that, but I think that there's biological and environmental factors that are at work there. So when you look at the population level and you see a very high correlation between biological sex and gender, that to me suggests that there is probably some kind of biological force at work there. But I think there's probably also environmental factors. I really just don't know. I mean, I'm just open to what the data is there. So we can just see what the data says. But I would assume that there's a strong biological force at work, even if maybe there's cases where the biology doesn't fully determine what happens, or maybe it's the case that like the social factors can outweigh the biological. Like I don't know, but I think that nonetheless, the fact that there's such a high correlation suggests that there's a strong biological component there.
Except for being fat, which is all genetics somehow. So I guess I'm just...
So I think he's trying to like point out a contradiction, like social justice warriors like hate biological determinism, but then they like it when it comes to, like being fat. I don't like to make those kind of general statements about what whole groups think, but yeah, I think that would be like that particular kind of like sort of contradictory attitude would probably be more common with social justice warriors than like vegans.
Just done expecting anything resembling a coherent worldview to come out of an SJW's mouth anymore. And in fact, there's really two types of vegans out there. There's the fat activist vegans who are hideous ham planets that insist they're healthier than everyone else because they're vegan. And yes, eating nothing but Oreos and vegetable oil french fries might be vegan, but it's certainly not fucking healthy. And then there's the second type of vegan, the impossibly thin hippie chick or soy boy, constantly spouting off their vegan lifestyle on YouTube as if it's a religious conviction or something.
Okay, that was really weird. That's just an obvious false dichotomy, right? Surely it's not the case that all vegans are either impossibly thin soy boys spouting about their lifestyle on Instagram or whatever it was you said, or fat activists. I mean, surely the vast majority of vegans aren't in either group. They're just normal people, right? They're not fat activists. They're not like impossibly skinny, the Instagram models or some shit like this. So just setting up that false dichotomy, that sort of indicates like illogical thinking to me. Like I think that there's a difference between thinking in a really systematic, logical way and sort of doing this like random sort of like stream of consciousness. Like, oh, vegans kind of seem like this and some seem like this. So it seems like there's like two types, right? Like a more rational person might do something like take a proposition and then take its negation and then say, it has to be the case that vegans are either on one side of this or the other because there's only the two options, either P or not P. So yeah, I reject that dichotomy. I think it's obvious that it's false and that most vegans don't fall on either side.
Well, most of those people are now giving up the vegan lifestyle. Yeah.
Oh god. Okay, so now I'm at a point where I'm like highly doubting this guy's rational ability. So he's created a false dichotomy: fat activist vegans and impossibly thin soy boy Instagram vegans or whatever. Started with the false dichotomy, and now he's building on that bad reasoning and saying within this half of the false dichotomy, the impossibly thin, healthy, whatever, most of these people are now leaving veganism. And he appears to be getting that by the YouTube search function showing videos of people leaving veganism. So there's just so much wrong there. The false dichotomy was wrong. The leap to the fact that one side of the dichotomy, the majority of the people on that side are leaving, was wrong. And then the basis for making the leap, which was a YouTube video search, is just like a horrible basis to reach that kind of conclusion. I mean, this is just like horrible logic on display here. And also just a little meme that's important for us to start spreading. We need to convey that the fact that there's an uptick in videos of people leaving veganism does not actually mean that there's an uptick in people leaving veganism, right? So it could be the case that the videos are just incentivized right now. It's just become kind of like a trend and like people know they can get attention. It could be something like that, right? It's not necessarily going to be the case that this actually means that people are leaving veganism at a higher rate, and no data has been produced that suggests that, right? So I currently just treat that like a myth, right? And people who buy into myths as, I'm trying to be polite in these videos now, as not the best reasoners.
Yeah, there's been a boatload of "I'm not vegan anymore" or "I was never vegan, sorry guys," or "Why I quit veganism" videos recently, where all of these high-profile vegan YouTubers have either admitted to straight up lying to their fan base, or have finally come clean about their extreme health problems.
It's just so insane. Like, I don't want to just restate it, but creates false dichotomy, says most of one half of the dichotomy is leaving veganism. The evidence is searching YouTube and finding videos of people leaving veganism. There's no statistics, there's no data analysis. It's just a stupid inductive leap from a YouTube search. Just horrible.
That veganism caused.
I'm hoping there's actually going to be a logical argument against veganism and not just a bunch of like narrative crafting like this.
To the point that they've had to stop being vegan in order to continue living.
Well, I mean, that if there are people who will say things like that, right? But those people haven't actually produced any data, right? That's just anecdotes. And you can find people who have anecdotes about all sorts of stuff. You can find, countless people who have anecdotes about the existence of God, and you reject that, right? So we don't want to trust anecdotal evidence. We want to go off the health science. And the health science says that veganism is perfectly healthy. So, yeah.
I mean, this is no surprise to any of us, right? I think it's very clear that regardless of what type of diet you're on, you can always find a way to be unhealthy. After all, you can eat a dozen packs of bacon a day and still be keto. A vegan who is completely deficient in the nutrients and protein that meat provides is going to be in just as much trouble as an Amerifat that eats cheeseburgers all day.
Yeah, I mean, you can be unhealthy as a vegan. You could have a shitty vegan diet.
They might have different health problems, but they're both pretty obviously unhealthy. The main reason I even heard about all of this nonsense was because of probably the most high-profile example of vegan YouTubers turning their backs on veganism and their vegan audiences. And that would be Tim Schiff's Am I Still Vegan vlog. Let's take a peek.
And so on that journey of...
Is he the highest profile who's left veganism? I don't know. But just keep in mind, right? And I don't say this just to be mean to Tim. It's just, like, we got to be real, okay? His feelings are not as important as spreading the right kind of information, and he's spreading damaging misinformation. So really, what we should always say when Tim comes up is that he's a piss-drinking flat earther, right? That is not said to insult him. It's just, this is someone who actually thought it would be good to drink his own piss and who believes the earth is flat, right? So it's important that we discredit him. It's important that we just say, like, not to be mean, but this guy is just not the sharpest knife in the drawer, okay? Drinks his own piss, thinks the earth is flat. No reason to take someone like this seriously.
The last 3 years when my health has been in decline, to start with, I blamed my health decline on...
Please don't make me sit through a friggin' Tim Sheaf video.
All of my pre-veganism nutrition.
This guy says his health has been in decline for 3 years, but his video backlog shows him happily talking about veganism making him healthier during this time period. Never lie to your audiences, folks. It will always backfire.
Okay, well, I have to say, look, Tim is not the smartest person. I don't know that he was lying. You know, he could just be really wrong because he just can't think very well. So I don't know if I jump to that he was lying. But yeah, no one should take Tim seriously. He's just, don't take him seriously. He drinks his piss and he thinks the earth is flat.
Everything from, I went to, those that follow the channel again would know that I did a fast in Hawaii, a fruit fast with herbs. So I've gone the herbal route. I've got Dr. Moore's herbs in my cupboard. It's 10-10, high carb, low fat. I've done high fat. I've done whole food plant-based for years. I've done junk food vegan. I tried it all. I drank my own urine for 2 years, almost every single day for 2
Oh, that's just so funny to just hear him say that seriously. Did you just say he drank his own urine for 2 years?
I tried it all. I drank my own urine for 2 years, almost every single day.
Wow. Holy crap. Okay. That's really crazy. I didn't realize that he was actually drinking his own piss for that long. That's like, it's just hilarious.
2 years.
Oh yeah, man, I tried it all. Junk food, low carb, I even drank my own piss. I've done everything. Fuck me, I think I'll subsist on a steady diet of my own shit next time.
Okay, so I'll give him points. That's funny. Okay, yeah, you made me laugh, Short Fat Otaku.
Why the fuck not?
That culminated in me doing a fast, a 35-day water fast, which was intended to be 7 days. But the more I researched, the more I felt confident I could go further, and the more I would benefit from going further, and the more I realized going further would clear out the deeper systems, the deeper problems that had been put in me from my pre-vegan days.
Does this 35-day water fast include urine? If so, you're in big trouble for lying to your audience again.
Well, again, I don't know if he lied or if he was just dumb. But yeah, it's also, I think, important to remember, again, I don't want to make a false statement here, but I'm pretty sure it's the case that he didn't go and see a doctor, right? Like, surely you should go and actually talk to, like, a nutritionist or doctor, some kind of, like, medical professional who knows about the area that you're dealing with before just taking, like, just trying weird, radical solutions you find on the internet. I mean, it's just, like, so obvious.
And when I actually consumed the animal products, my body appeared to feel something better. Not that it's evidence for anything specific, depends on the person. I mean, there's many. The first night.
Okay, come on, Short Fat Otaku. You better make a criticism of veganism that it's not based on Tim fucking Sheaf, okay? Like, this is just like one of the worst examples of veganism you could ever go and find, right? Please, like, you know, show something that someone like me or Vegan Gains or like Ed or Joey or, you know, someone serious has said that's wrong.
After I had that salmon, I had a wet dream. I hadn't ejaculated in months.
Yep, this is the bit that went viral. Vegan soy boy tries everything, finally decides to eat salmon and eggs, ejaculates for the first time in 3 months. If you ever needed a reinforcement of the soy boy low-test beta male meme, it is this fucking guy, alright? I mean, on the one hand, it's pretty obvious that the soy thing is just a meme. I mean, come on, you've got Indonesian dock workers who eat tempeh every day, and those motherfuckers can haul weight like you cannot believe. But on the other hand, you've got Jesse Cox posting with his Soylent, probably carrying a Nintendo Switch case just off screen, enjoying his sweet chai breakfast. I'm no evolutionary biologist, but I was under the impression that one of the reasons our ancestors diverged away from the other great apes was because we began to eat significantly more amounts of meat than they did. I know gorillas and such still eat some meat. In fact, they're cannibals under certain conditions, but they largely eat leafy greens. Leafy greens are extremely hard to digest. It takes the body a lot of work and time to break them down and turn them into usable material. In a very general sense, the larger an animal's digestive tract is, and the more energy devoted to its operation, the more likely it is that the animal has a plant-based diet. By the way, this is where the idea comes from that celery has negative calories, because it costs your body more calories and energy to digest the celery than the celery actually contains.
Okay, I don't know about all this health stuff. I don't have any comments on this.
But for some reason, something that I don't quite understand, humans evolved to seek out sources of food that were more calorie dense. For example, one of the reasons we can see in vibrant color when most other animals can't is because we evolved to spot ripe fruit.
Is that the case? I don't know if that's the case.
And fruit is a more calorie-dense food than leaves, and meat is a more calorie-dense food than fruit, along with the benefit that it's high in protein, something that most plant-based diets severely lack. And when the ancestors of humans no longer had to maintain massive protein synthesis mechanisms to create protein from plants, the way gorillas do, that freed up a ton of energy that would eventually be used on brain development. At least that's my layman's understanding of the situation. I probably got a lot of that wrong, but it seems reasonable to me.
Well, let's just grant it, right? Let's just say that it was eating meat that caused our brains to develop. That wouldn't lead you to the position. I mean, at least I don't see why it should lead you to the position that eating meat is currently justified, right? If we can get all our nutrients elsewhere, then I don't see why we do it. The fact that something had a positive effect at some point in history shouldn't be an argument for doing it currently, right?
I understand the ethical considerations of veganism. You don't want to pollute the planet, you don't want to exploit animals, etc. Even though those things aren't number one on my priority list personally, I can't say they're not ethical. They clearly come from a place of heartfelt belief, but they still don't really hold water. A planet full of vegans would require a radical restructuring of farming techniques, to the point that a lot of animals would still likely go extinct. Most notably, animals that we currently do not regularly eat, like rodents and grassland animals and that sort of thing. I'm not saying that our current farming techniques are good for the...
Wait, what? Did he just say that if the world went vegan, rodents would go extinct? I mean, I just don't know how he's getting there. It's a strange claim to make, but obviously the thing we want to look at is we want to look at the well-being, and we want to go, look, if we all stop supporting the animal holocaust, is well-being going to go up or down? And I think it would be a tall order to try to say that it's going to go up if we stop, or sorry, that well-being is going to go down if we stop supporting the animal holocaust.
The environment, but simply going vegan doesn't fix the problem. Most of our problems would remain, and we'd also have...
Going vegan's not going to fix every problem. It just, it's just something that we should do. I mean, it seems like an ethical commitment that's going to follow on most people's systems.
A hideously sickly population alongside them. In the end, would remain, and we'd also have a hideously sickly population alongside them.
Hideously... I don't even know. I have no idea.
In the end, do what you want with your lives. You want to try being vegan, go ahead.
Do what you want? Well, I mean, that seems like a very bad attitude to hold. I mean, you don't hold the attitude of do what you want with respect to murdering humans, right? So my question would be, what's true of an animal that, if true of a human, would cause you to say do what you want with respect to murdering humans?
But people who eat normal, westernized diets are not somehow less moral than vegans. And I think the
well, I mean, that depends how you quantify morality. So if the idea is anything about well-being, then it seems pretty obvious that a vegan diet is going to be better for well-being than a carnivore diet. So, I mean, right there, that would be a basis for saying that vegans are more ethical. If you're like a deontologist and you want to talk about rights violations, I think there's also less rights violations on a vegan diet. So unless you think that supporting a Holocaust is morally equivalent to not supporting a Holocaust, I don't see how you're going to hold down that position.
Vegans are finally figuring that out. At the very least, not somehow less moral than vegans. And I think the vegans are finally figuring that out. At the very least, the prevalence of vegans making videos about how veganism failed them shows that unlike most other movements aligned underneath the larger social justice umbrella, the vegans are able to be introspective, recognize patterns and evidence, and adjust accordingly.
These are just such random statements. Like, I'm sure there's people who hold various positions within social justice who are able to do that also. And you said the vegans are changing their position. What about being morally superior, about having a better diet? I don't know if they're like, do you have any data to show that, or is this just all some like YouTube search function induction or something?
I completely understand why the vegans can do this while the fat activists can't, but I think I have a reasonable hypothesis. A core tenet of veganism, or any other diet really, is watch what you eat. Vegans, vegetarians, paleo, keto, dirty bulkers, whatever, they all eat radically different things, but they all share a common rule. Watch what you eat. I think this attitude leads to a tendency to rely on observation. Why watch what you eat if the act of watching is unimportant? Well, very clearly it is important. So the vegans place value on the act of observing and gleaming information from their observations. And when that information leads them to abandon veganism, which it almost always will, they're more likely to be truthful and go for it.
There's just so much weird here. So it's saying like vegans are more likely to be introspective and therefore more likely to leave veganism. But he hasn't shown that vegans are more likely to be introspective. And he hasn't shown that vegans are more... he hasn't shown that there's any kind of like uptick in vegans leaving veganism, or that, you know, most vegans eventually leave or something. So I don't get how he's... I don't get how he's making these weird sort of like logic jumps. Yeah.
Compare that to the attitude of fat activists. Health at any size, fat is beautiful, it's all the fault of genetics, thin privilege and fat oppression, yada yada yada. Nothing in the fat activist value system prioritizes taking an objective reading of the world. Rather, they operate on faith that their ideology is scientifically sound. And when
I just don't know. I'd want to see data on what these people actually think. Like, I know there's examples of people like that, but I just don't feel comfortable generalizing about a whole movement of people.
it's not, they have no way to conceptualize why it's not except as oppression, because they have no way to gather accurate data. This is kind of like the upper-class globalist lefties who want to see economic migrants flood into the low-income areas of Europe or America. They have an ideology that they believe in, and because their ideology is specifically structured to be unable to gather information from the outside world and update itself accordingly, they have no way to understand why they're wrong. They're intellectually neutered, in a sense. Feminism is like this. Environmentalism is like...
These are big generalizations. So the general thing he's saying here is like a lot of these social justice movements are incapable of adjusting as data comes in to like sort of, I don't know, like be more efficient at achieving their goals or whatever, and that vegans, this isn't the case with them. That's just such a broad, vague kind of analysis. I don't know how you'd ever like demonstrate that. It just seems like a kind of loose like inference from like some examples of some of these people, right? So I don't really feel comfortable with that kind of inference. What I need is like data about beliefs that these people hold. And I don't find this kind of criticism interesting either. Like, what I want is a logical criticism of the position, right? So like I could give little comments here and there, but I don't really have that much to say about the kind of things he's saying here. What I want is just the logical criticism of veganism. Like, why does ShortFatOtaku think that it's justified to not be vegan?
Like this, though not always. And social justice as a whole is definitely like this. And that's what makes veganism the odd one out. They fit in so well with the rest of social justice, but that one tiny difference, the ability to process incoming information, is what makes them drastically different.
How would you establish that like vegans can process incoming information, but like say like feminists can't or something? Like, that just seems like such a weird claim to make. Like, maybe if you like defined it in some specific way or something and went and collected data and then showed like, but it's just a loose random inference that you got no evidence for. So I mean, I don't know, I'm not gonna hop on board with that.
Ironically enough, it's also why veganism is collapsing. And if we were to take away a larger lesson from this, it would be that
This is so weird. So he's saying like vegans can introspect unlike these other social justice movements, and it's their introspection that's leaving people to leave veganism, and that veganism is collapsing. I mean, you haven't given evidence that veganism is collapsing. You did a YouTube video search, and this weird theory about introspection. You haven't shown that there's a higher ability to introspect among vegans. You've just asserted it. And then the notion that the higher introspection is what's leaving people to leave, when the people who are leaving are like, no offense, like some of the friggin' dumbest people I've ever seen. Like, I don't know, it's just not working for me.
The best way to combat social justice is to see that individual SJWs also begin to process incoming information. And hey, if you wanted a reason why the radical left hates free speech so much, well, there it is. You can't begin processing new info if nobody is around to speak it. You know, I've never...
So, I'm not even going to try to give an analysis of that last bit about the left hating free speech. So, yeah, look, all I really have to say, I'm definitely giving this one a downvote, is a lot of this video seems to be narrative crafting and making like loose connections to things like fat acceptance and feminism and just kind of like theorizing and stuff, and none of that's interesting to me. I haven't heard any good argument against veganism here, so it's weird to call this video a rebuke of veganism. I heard you say at one point something like everyone can do what they want. I mean, I'd be curious if you can name the trade on holding that position with respect to animals, but not humans. And yeah, ShortFatOtaku, if you actually think that you can defend your anti-vegan position in debate, I'd be happy to have you on for a debate or a discussion if that's a little too intimidating. I know that a lot of people in the sort of anti-SJW community kind of like fear us at this point because we've destroyed so many of you in debates, but you know, I can do a conversation if a debate's too threatening. But yeah, the offer's open if you think your anti-vegan position is defensible. So yeah, that's all for today. Also, guys, if any of you are in Toronto, my sister has opened up a yoga business. So she's really dedicated to this stuff. She spent a ton of time, went over to BC and like, you know, trained up skills with some like yoga master guy out there. I don't know, but point is she's getting really real about this. And if you're in Toronto and you're looking for some good instruction on yoga, make sure to check out my sister's business. So on Insta, it's Hannah Brown Yoga. Go and follow her. Okay, and support on Patreon if you like what I'm doing. That is all for today. Till next time.